Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. Here you have another case of a black man being denied justice. About a year ago, Ray Tensing, an officer with the University of Cincinnati, stopped Sam DuBose for driving without a license plate on the front of his car. That's what he stopped him for. He didn't stop him for being a suspect in a murder or a robbery or some violent crime. He stopped this man for driving without a license plate on the front of his car. So after he stops him, he briefly asks him some questions, and then the door is open to the vehicle at one point, and then Sam DuBose tries to close the door and he tries to drive away. All of this happens in a matter of seconds. This officer, Ray Tensing, reaches in the car briefly, and as the car is driving away for a couple of seconds, Ray Tensing shoots Sam DuBose in the head, killing him. This whole incident was captured on body camera video, and at the time when this occurred, Ray Tensing said, well, he was dragged by the vehicle. He claims that the vehicle almost ran him over. But all of that testimony or his statement is completely contradicted by the video. Again, as I said, it went by in seconds. During the trial, expert witnesses testified that he was not dragged by the vehicle. In the video footage, you don't see the vehicle being in a position where it's running him over or close to running him over. This man completely lied. He made up this bogus story in order to justify the killing of a black man. Now, this case went to trial. The case was tried, and the jury deliberated for 25 hours. 25 hours in a case where you have clear video evidence of a murder, or at bare minimum, clear video evidence of voluntary manslaughter. But this jury, a jury made up of 10 white people and 2 black people, was unable to reach a verdict. I can't understand how that can be the case. When you have clear evidence on video of a murder, you have clear evidence of voluntary manslaughter at the very least. But they let this man essentially go. Some of those jurors thought he was innocent of everything. At first, people were deciding whether or not to convict him of murder. And then apparently the jury decided, well, perhaps we can convict him of voluntary manslaughter. But you still had people holding out. Still had people saying, well, I'm not going to convict him. I don't think there's enough evidence, even though you had this video showing this stinking pig killing his brother. And these people, in the face of this kind of injustice, where you have video evidence, and this is not the only example, you have other examples. And the one that comes to mind is Eric Garner being choked to death live on camera, and no charges being even filed against the police officer who strangled that brother to death. It reminds me of the days when I first got involved in this activism, when I saw Rodney King being beat repeatedly by police officers, and no crimes were, none of them were convicted of anything during the first trial. It reminds me of that situation. Here we are all these years later, and we still have this pervasive problem of police brutality. We still have a criminal justice system that does not render justice for black people. A system that continues to allow these police to kill black people with impunity. And when you have black people that demand justice, those black people are condemned. When you have black people that tell the world that our lives have value, that our lives matter. Those people are condemned for simply saying a basic statement, demanding that the world recognize our humanity. This is the kind of world we live in. This is the kind of country we live in. We need to demand justice in this case. Now it's up to the prosecutor to decide whether or not to retry the case. And I encourage everybody that lives in that county to put pressure on that prosecutor to retry the case. I don't care how long you have to march. I don't care how many protests you have to do. But you got to get out there in those streets and do what is necessary to demand that this case be retried until justice is rendered. You have to, even if that means disrupting traffic, even if that means engaging in other acts of civil disobedience. We have to make sure that this case is retried. And this is just another reminder of how important elections are. In Ohio, one of the ways that they draw jurors is from those who have registered to vote. They also draw jurors from driver's licensing records. But voter registration is an important part of the process as well. And it helps us get on these juries. It helps us have some kind of voice in the outcome of cases like this. And also in these jurisdictions, we had the power to elect the prosecutors who decide whether or not to prosecute these types of cases. So we have to put pressure on this prosecutor to retry the case. Even if you don't live in I think it's Hamilton County, Ohio, you still should be a part of the process, and you should still demand that this case be retried. Because it's only so much injustice that the people can take. There's going to come a point when you're going to see more rebellions in these cities. You're going to see more so-called riots in these cities. Because as Dr. Martin Luther King said, a riot is the language of the unheard. And if we're not heard in the courts, we'll be heard in the streets.